All right, so you know that you can invest in Bitcoin through an ETF, but you don't really know whether you should do it through an ETF or you should use a crypto exchange like Coinbase, Binance, or any other. Well, in this video, I'm gonna give you the answer to all that and help you make a decision. I'm gonna bring you the different fee structures, what is cheaper, what is more expensive, what is more secure, what is more regulated. All that we're gonna discuss in this video. My name is Fefe and I educate you about crypto, whether that's from the very basics, what is the problem with our financial system, why Bitcoin is needed, and all that stuff, to very complex things like leverage trading and DeFi and much more. Now, if you are just wondering whether you should invest in Bitcoin or you should not, or you're not really understanding the whole concept, I invite you to join our course. It's completely free. There is no catch. We spent the last year in designing it. There is a cohort launching in 10 days. There is a link in the description, limited spots. We're also gonna pin the link in the comment section, so go and check that out. But if you're wondering whether it's an ETF or an exchange, well, let's get going. Well, number one, the most important thing is to understand what is an ETF. An ETF is an exchange traded fund, an investment fund that holds a collection, or not necessarily a collection, or one single asset like stocks or bonds or cryptocurrencies. And now recently there was a big boom in Bitcoin and Bitcoin success within the ETFs. Now, the Bitcoin ETF works in a way that the ETFs, or the providers of the ETFs, acquire Bitcoin instead of you and basically custody or hold that Bitcoin through. Now the question might be, so what is the difference between an exchange, buying it in an exchange, and an ETF? Well, the first biggest difference is that when it comes to an ETF, the ETFs does all the heavy lifting for you. So when it comes to the Bitcoin ETF basically holds Bitcoins for you or instead of you, and the ETF providers custody it for you, giving you the opportunity to invest into Bitcoin through a normal, traditional investment vehicle where you would probably hold your stocks as well. This gives you the option to diversify without having to open up a new exchange account and all that. So it's actually quite smart. Now, Bitcoin, the biggest holders are Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the creator of Bitcoin, one of the biggest holders, 1.1 million Bitcoin. Then comes Coinbase, one of the leading exchanges in the US. But also you see BlackRock down here, and you see Fidelity, and you see Grayscale, all of which are ETF providers. It's not them actually owning this Bitcoin, but the people who buy the ETF through these providers hold the Bitcoin there. Now, the US ETF market is actually quite big, substantially. If you look at BlackRock's ETF, Fidelity, you have ARK, you have Bitwise, you have VanEck, you have all these different ETF providers. And if you look down here, this number, 1,210,000 Bitcoin, is what the US ETF providers hold combined. Now, why this is interesting? It's interesting because that's about, if you consider the fact that there is only 21 million Bitcoin ever going to be created, you can know this from the course as well. But if you consider the fact that there is about 3 to 4 million Bitcoin that has already been lost or sent to a wrong address or lost the seed phrase to a wallet, it's basically disappeared. This is almost 7 to 10% of every Bitcoin on the planet that is ever going to be created. It's actually massive, and we basically just got started. Talking about just got started, the Bitcoin ETF, fun fact, has been the fastest ETF ever to reach 70 billion asset under management within 341 days. The second was gold, which reached it in 1691 days. So the ETF is a massive, massive success. Now, where can you buy a Bitcoin ETF? Where can you buy Bitcoin through an ETF? There are multiple vehicles to do this, and I don't want to speak to anything specific, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Europe and Asia, you will have multiple options, but what is most important is that the likelihood of you having opportunity to invest in Bitcoin through your normal brokerage that you buy stocks with is very, very high. So you should just go and talk to different brokerages. Even if you're in a tiny, tiny country, go and just ask your bank, go and ask your investment manager, go and ask different brokerages, local brokerages, what is the avenues for you to invest in a Bitcoin ETF. Most likely, they are going to have access to, for example, BlackRock's ETF or Fidelity or any other major ETF providers, and you can invest through there in a normal manner, in a traditional manner that you have used to. But also you can just search it up. This is the some of the ETFs that you can find worldwide. You can just search for where to invest, and you can find the list of all the ETFs. For example, you see here Switzerland, Xtrackers Galaxy. You see here in Germany, Fidelity. You see it in the UK, One Valor, Bitcoin, physical staking. So you can look all this up and understand regardless of where you are in the world. And as I said, one of the biggest advantages in my mind in going through and investing in an ETF rather than investing in a Bitcoin through an exchange is that you can use your retirement fund. So a lot of people has 401ks, IRAs, so depending on what you use, you can have different investment vehicles and retirement funds, whether you're in Europe, Asia, America, whatever that might be. And the best thing is that you can allocate some of the funds or even all of your retirement fund into Bitcoin through the ETFs, which was not possible before. So the ETFs enabled these retirement funds to allocate and purchase legally. They are allowed to purchase different ETFs. And most of the time you can request them what you want them to purchase with your retirement fund. So now you will have the possibility to go to your retirement fund and tell them that you want an ETF to be purchased, which is the Bitcoin ETF or an Ethereum ETF and soon coming Solana ETF. And you're able to do that with your retirement fund. Now, if you look at Bitcoin's performance the past 10 years and your retirement fund running out in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, I do think it's an incredible opportunity and an incredible option to just allocate some of your retirement money into a Bitcoin ETF. Even if you don't do it all, even if you just do 5%, I think it is a no-brainer to do so. So in general, I'm gonna do a summary at the end, but what you have to understand that there are certain fee structures that you need to understand when it comes to ETFs. There are flat fees depending on what ETFs you choose. So if you look here, I do have a table here that I drafted on my X. There's a link in the description for that as well that you can find this on my X account. But for example, if you look at in general, the fees on a Bitcoin ETF vary from between 0.12% to 0.35%. It's an annual fee. So if you buy a Bitcoin ETF, you will have to pay this every single year. It's not per transaction. Plus you pay a transaction fee, plus you take the small bid and ask spread, which is not substantial, but you still pay that. So you have to understand that I'm going to talk about the exchange in a second, but buying Bitcoin on an exchange is a one-time fee of the purchase, depending on the volume that you're buying. When you hold an ETF, you pay a percentage fee, which is an annualized fee every single year that you pay for the ETF provider. And so the other option is to buy Bitcoin through an exchange. I'm gonna bring Bybit as an example here, not only because they've been our longtime partners and one of the most reputable exchanges out there, but also because they have just announced that you're able to buy stocks and commodities and hold your stocks and commodities on Bybit with your crypto portfolio, which is absolutely huge. So you're able to do that on Bybit. But some of the advantages is one, the fee. So as I said, you have a flat fee or you have a percentage fee, an annualized fee if you want to hold Bitcoin through an ETF. That might sound small to pay 0.2%, 0.25%, plus you pay the transaction fee, plus you pay the spread. But it is quite substantial if you think about the other option, which is buying it through an exchange. Now, even if you don't have any other functions, so you just transact a low amount of volume, meaning you don't put in hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, you can have a takers and makers fee of 0.1% on the transaction, which is already half of what you would pay annually for the ETFs. So buying Bitcoin on an exchange is going to be much cheaper, and you don't have an annual fee that you incur by doing so. That's one. The second is that when you buy on an exchange, you have options to convert. So there is a convert feature on most of the exchanges, which until a certain amount of money, again, this is very good if you don't transact hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is free to convert from US dollars into Bitcoin and back. So you don't even pay this fee. That's two. The third is that these markets are always open. So while an ETF is tradable while the US market, for example, US ETF is tradable while the US session is open, if you have Bitcoin on an exchange, you can trade that 24/7 and no one can limit you in doing so. Why is that good? Well, if there is news coming in and it's the weekend, well, you can hold your ETF, but you can't really sell your Bitcoin. If your plan is to invest for a long time, I'm gonna have a solution for that as well, but you might wanna consider doing an ETF there because then you don't want to sell it. And the third thing, which is I think is pretty cool, other than the fact that you can receive which I said you can receive your funds in 1 to 3 days with an ETF. First of all, you can't sell whenever you want, only in opening hours. But two, the funds may take 1 to 3 days to get to you. Now, one is that you can sell 24/7 on an exchange, but two, you can have different options. And this is just Bybit, but you can look at all the other major exchanges. You can look at Gemini, Coinbase, Binance, all these major exchanges, and they have cards as well, which means that you're able to acquire a card that you can spend straight out from your exchange. So what that means is that you buy a Bitcoin, right, on an exchange, and you're able to spend that Bitcoin with a card straight out. even spend the actual Bitcoin or just convert it. Let's say that you don't, it's not because of the news, but you just need some cash. If you have your cash in ETF, it's not liquid. You need 1 or 3 days for the money to get to you. If it's weekend, you can't withdraw, all that stuff. In this case, you can have a card to an exchange and you can immediately spend from there. Now, I said that I'm gonna address a little bit if you're just investing for long term, why would it make sense for you to buy an ETF rather than use an exchange? And that is because you don't require all this stuff. You have to set up an exchange, you have to, you have to transfer money, then you have to manage that, you have to do two-factor authentication, which, by the way, again, we teach all of this in our course, Intro to Crypto, which is getting you up to speed. If you know anyone, if you wanted to get your mom in, your dad in, your neighbor in, this is the opportunity. There's a link in the description and there's a link pinned in the comment section. Go and send them the link, come and join us. It's completely free and we teach you all that, every single basics. You might be wondering, by the way, how can it be free? It's very simple. We partnered with the best exchanges and the best partners, and they basically help us help you, and they sponsor your learning experience. So it is completely free. There is no catch. Anyway, so the second option, which I think would be the best going forward, is to, even if you invest for a long term, don't get into an ETF, but get into a self-custody solution. Meaning, for example, you can get one of these devices. It's a ledger device that you can get. It's a cold wallet that you can simply keep and put your money on, and you don't keep it on an exchange, but I can put $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, or $10 on this and just keep it in my drawer, and it's not on an exchange. I don't have to manage. I can invest for 10 years and not worry about any of these, but I do not pay the fee on anything that happens. I don't pay the fee. I can withdraw anytime I want, but I still have the flexibility that I'm not relying on an exchange. So that is, in my opinion, a great option. So I want to summarize everything and want you to think about what could be the best option for you. So I drafted this table. Again, it's going to be in the description, my X profile, so you can see this post on there and you can compare it. But in general, if you have a retirement account that is just sitting there and you probably invested in some bonds or whatever that might be, put that into Bitcoin. If you have the option through the ETFs, do that. Ask your retirement fund to look that up. And if you have the possibility, I do believe it makes sense to even allocate the whole thing, but just allocate a percentage of your retirement fund into Bitcoin. So that's a great idea. And then I said passive investors, if you already have a bunch of stocks and ETFs, and if you already have a great relationship with your broker and all that, I think it makes sense for you to just say, hey, could you just do a little bit of allocation? Can we just, make sure that we have 5%, 10% in Bitcoin, and then your broker is going to do the whole thing. You don't have to go through opening an exchange account and understanding the whole thing. But at the same time, I do think this is the future, and this is why we're teaching it. If you want to get more into crypto, I think you will need a crypto exchange. So savvy investors, if you want to become an investor in crypto and not just, play around with Bitcoin, I do think it makes sense to actually get an exchange and acquire your Bitcoin through an exchange. And also, you are your bank. If you have a cold wallet, and you can't own your Bitcoin if you buy it through an ETF, because they will custody it for you. So the ownership, that's the one. You have direct ownership here. You don't have direct ownership through an ETF or even an exchange. Ease of use. Now an ETF, again, if you already have a brokerage account, there is nothing simpler. I would be lying if I said, yeah, go out and just buy subscribe to sign up to an exchange. By the way, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already, and check out the links below. Follow me on X and do all that. Sign up to an exchange account, then you have to do two-factor authentication, which again we teach you in the school. But like if you don't need it because you have a great relationship, I think it doesn't make sense for you. But if you want to get into it, I think that is the way. Tradable hours. I think this is a huge one. So like you can't really get access to your crypto if you are doing an ETF and it's the weekend or it's holiday or bank holiday or what might be. This is a very big selling point for me. Why I would never actually do an ETF. Fees, again, you might be thinking it's not substantial, but if you really start adding it up throughout the years on a yearly basis, this actually becomes quite a lot. Retirement fund, can you do it? This is a very big advantage on the ETF side. I can get my retirement fund to actually invest in Bitcoin. This is very, very, very bullish. You can do that through an exchange. Custody, institutions manage. I think from a safety perspective, there is nothing safer than a cold storage if you know how to do it. This is why I've always been saying cold wallets and self-custody is the way, but you have to know what you're doing. This is why we put a lot of emphasis in the course as well. But it is regulated. So ETFs are regulated. They custody through regulated entities. So I do think if I have to pick an ETF from a regulatory standpoint or a crypto exchange, I would most likely pick an ETF, because I do believe that regulation from that perspective is much better. better. Risk, very low risk on ETFs, exactly because of what I explained. And there are some exchanges that are not as well regulated as legit ETFs. So from that perspective, again, an ETF is better. But I want you to understand that this is not substantial. Like the risk here, we're talking about risk that is, these exchanges have been here for a long time. They had major hacks, for example, and refunded users. So I don't think that's an actual risk. If you are, it's not a risk at all if you know how to self-custody, but it's not a risk even if you use reputable partners. And then decentralization and the ethos of decentralization and DeFi is also there because when you buy Bitcoin through an ETF, that's it. You bought Bitcoin, you can't really ripple that into different tokens. You can't really buy altcoins with it. You can't really start staking with it, which by the way, you can do in exchanges. So I can go into Bybit and I could actually just stake my Bitcoin while it's sitting there and even earns me, even if it's just 2% a year, instead of me paying 0.5% or 0.3%, now the exchange is paying me to keep my Bitcoin there. So decentralization as DeFi is also only available if you hold your own crypto or you have it on an exchange, not through an ETF. Guys, I hope that this helped you and I hope that this gave you a little bit of better understanding on what you want to choose, whether that's an ETF or an exchange. Let me know if you have any questions or any thoughts or anything that you want to hear more about. I'm actually monitoring the comments. I reply to every single comment and I want to help you in the next video of understanding how you can manage your money better. And also, again, I invite you, even if you know something about crypto, I do recommend you sign up and check out our course, which is launching in 10 days. It's actually crazy. The next cohort is coming up in 10 days. The course is completely for free. There's a link in the description and in the pinned comment section. I truly appreciate you spending time here with me, and I believe I'll see you in school. Take care.